Our next guest wrote this book, which I'm holding in my hands, and I read it while flying across the Pacific. Interesting dialogue, obviously, going on in this book, and we're going to have here. It's called Accidental Conflict, America, China, and the Clash of False Narratives. It's Stephen Roach, the former Morgan Stanley chairman in Asia Pacific, and now, I believe, Yale Law School senior fellow. You dedicated this to your students.
I did.
It's all about the narratives and competing narratives, false narratives, you say. You talked in your previous book, I remember you wrote about the codependency between China and the United States. And as that codependency aged, it might not age well and could lead to conflict.
That's the way I ended the last book. That's
exactly
right.
So how are we going to get back, not necessarily to codependence, but to constructive dialogue where the United States and China, two world's biggest superpowers, biggest economies, can actually coexist?
Well, that's a great question, and one that was grating on me as I went through the book. The basic premise of this book, Steve, is that we are in the danger zone right now. Last 5 years, trade war, tech war, now early stages of a new Cold War, and it would not have happened were it not for the false narratives that both nations embrace toward one another. So how to recapture any semblance of a constructive relationship? I offer 3 things in the book. 1, simple things to rebuild trust, like opening consulates and restarting foreign exchange programs, relaxing visa requirements, but tougher things too, like global health, global climate change, cyber. Secondly, I'm a strong advocate of going back to finishing up negotiations on a bilateral investment treaty to lower investment barriers and allow both nations to focus on growth. And thirdly, I want a new architecture of engagement. I call it a U.S.-China Secretariat, a full-time organization working 24/7 on all aspects of the relationship, from trade and economics to climate, industrial policy, innovation policy. And I want collaboration from 2 large, well-trained professional teams of Chinese and American experts to work full-time on this relationship.
That takes a lot of political capital on both sides to spend at a time when it serves politicians better to, amplify the false narratives, if you want to call them that. And because, look, even Biden did not back down from the tariffs on China. He kept them in place from the Trump administration.
Well,
so
he's done worse than that. He's done worse than that, because there is a chapter in here, and you've read the book, so you probably know exactly what chapter I'm talking about. Chapter 7, From Trump to Biden, the plot thickens. It's gotten worse under Joe Biden, because not only did he keep the tariffs in place, but he has identified China now as a peer competitor on technology and has taken actions in early October of 2022 to sanction all of China's access to advanced semiconductor chips, which is aimed at stifling their very important efforts on AI and quantum computing.
Does it hinder them completely, or does it just spur China's domestic innovation?
That remains to be seen. I think for the near term, this is a major impediment to China, because to build a domestic advanced semiconductor chip industry is something they have been trying to do for over a decade. They've poured hundreds of billions of dollars into it, and they have not yet been able to do it.
Well, they could take Taiwan. That's a big fear, because Chapter 6 is about Cold War 2.0. Yes, I've read the book.
Yeah,
so
what
is the real likelihood that this kind of confrontation, economic, geopolitical, and narrative false narratives, leads to actual military conflict?
Well, that's why I chose the title of the book, Accidental Conflict. These false narratives come together, and I would describe them collectively as the functional equivalent of the high-octane fuel of conflict escalation. Any spark can ignite the fuel. Taiwan could do it. South China Sea could do it. China's role as a partner with Russia in this horrible war in Ukraine. A global recession could do it. So it is critical to take these preemptive actions now, before it's too late, before the accident actually happens, along the lines of what you described or what others fear?
Yeah, I mean, that sidling up to Moscow has not helped the narrative for China in the West, they say.
Not at all.
And what's your take on the opening up? Because the West and those who have not spent as much time in the Asia Pacific as you have and as I have would say, these policy moves on such a U-turn, such a pinpoint, and now just dropping COVID-0 after saying it was the biggest threat facing the nation, now all of a sudden downgrading it.
It's staggering. It really is. I mean, and look, zero COVID was an unsustainable, impractical, ridiculous policy. But to go from no COVID to all COVID, with a flick of a switch, is disruptive, chaotic, and certainly indicative of a Chinese policy move that is not nearly as well planned as they want to give themselves credit for and as we typically give them credit for. So now you've got COVID raging at a time when the nation does not have herd immunity. The elderly are unvaccinated. The vaccines that they have are inferior, and the hospital system is inadequate to deal with the problems. All of that ahead of the Chinese New Year's holiday with infected urban residents rushing back to their rural countryside where the hospitals are particularly lousy. It's a serious problem.
So was COVID-0 a complete waste of time? And was it all because of the Party Congress and his cementing his third consecutive term?
It's hard.
Putting you on the spot.
It's hard to know the motives, but this was a signature policy of Xi Jinping. He was unflinching in doing that and unflinching in boasting of China's superior approach to dealing with a horrific pandemic. But what worked in addressing the strain that came out of Wuhan did not work at all with this highly contagious strain of Omicron.
Speaking of narratives, whether it's false or not, what about the Fed? Are they doing the right thing? I mean, inflation's come down to 6.5%. Do you think that the Fed's got, the right handle on this situation?
Well, finally they do. I mean, the reason the Fed has had to move as aggressively as they have, and this is the most aggressive monetary tightening we have seen really since Paul Volcker's days, is because they really made a terrible blunder in leaving policy too easy for too long in the second half of 2020 and throughout 2021. So they were in a deep hole with the federal funds rate at 0 and inflation surging past 8% at one point, peaking at 9.1%. So the real interest rates were in negative territory, more so than they've ever been. They have moved aggressively, but real interest rates, the nominal federal funds rate, less the inflation rate, is still negative today. And so the Fed knows that they have more work to do, and they'll do maybe another few tightenings before it's over. But what the markets refuse to accept is that once they get the federal funds rate where they want it, they're going to hold it there for a long time to make certain they re-anchor inflationary expectations.
Very quickly, does China rescue the U.S. and the rest of the world from recession?
No, it doesn't. I go back to the period after the global financial crisis. China was surging at 7.5%. And that really cushioned the world that was close to going back into recession. They're not going to do 7.5%.